Hi guys, today we're going to take a look at page 5 of the Unit 3 classwork packet. In our last video, we looked at the properties of equality, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, distributive, and so many more, that you guys first learned last year. Now, we're going to review how you would actually apply those in the context of a two-column proof. Now, as a reminder from last year, how does a two-column proof work? Well, as the name suggests, it has two columns, okay? And on the left-hand side, we put our statements. Last year, your teacher might have referred to it as your work, like actually solving the equation. But in geometry, we're going to call it statements. And on the right-hand side, that's where we're going to put our reasons, or in other words, the properties that we're using in order to do the work on the left-hand side. So we're going to take a look at this together in the case of example number 3. Okay, so we're going to start off with example number 3. Okay, now, one thing to note. Do you notice how they actually filled in the entire first line for you? Does everybody see that? They filled in the first line. The reason for that is that whatever you are given in the problem, like if they actually give you information, the justification for that, the reason, is always going to be your given. And up here, I'm just going to say prove. Well, what are we proving? X equals -2. Got it. Okay. Okay, so first things first, I'm actually just going to write in what they did here. Because it's actually kind of nice, right? They actually mostly solved this equation for me. But what they did was they kind of like left out the steps. Now, with a proof, you actually know both the beginning and you know the end. 99% of the time, the very first reason is going to be given, and the very last thing is going to be what you're trying to prove. Okay, so even if they didn't give you that this x equals -2, you could actually get it from the original proof statement. Let me say that again, because this is one of those like big EOC test prep kind of tips. Okay, whatever they tell you to prove, that's going to be your last statement. Prove last. Last, prove. I don't know how many more ways I can say this. Okay, now let's take a look at what they did here, shall we? What they did was they did what? How did we get from here to here? What did they do with that -9? Well, they used the distributive property. So what I would write over here is distributive property. On the EOC, it would be a more formal name like the distributive property of equality, but honestly, I'm okay if you just like write distributive, okay? Then, how do we get from here? How do we get rid of that +27? Well, I subtracted it from both sides, so I would say that's the subtraction property of equality. And last but not least, how did I get rid of the multiplied 18 right over here? Well, I just divided, and so my final reason would be the division property of equality, okay? Now, on the actual EOC, you might have to, like fill in different bits and pieces. In this particular example, you were only filling in the right-hand side. On the EOC, typical problem would actually have some blanks both on left and right, and so you'd actually have to work through the whole thing and fill in missing pieces on both sides, okay? Now, just looking very briefly with me at example 5, okay, just so we can take a look at this together. I'm not actually going to work it out up here, okay, just, well, probably for the sake of my poor dying marker, but also because it's helpful to talk through it sometimes. For example 5, they gave you the first reason was your given, because they just literally copy-pasted the equation as is. Then, in order to get rid of the parentheses, they used the distributive property. So, line 2, distributive property. Then, line 3, notice what they did on the left-hand side. They actually combined a -7x and a 4x. When you combine like terms, the key word that we're going to use is the word simplify. Let me say that again. When you combine like terms, you use the keyword simplify. So line 3, for example, I'm so sorry, example 5. What am I saying? It's number 4 on the page, but it says 5. I don't know why. Whenever you see combine like terms, it's actually going to be simplify. Then, in order to get from step 3 to step 4, look at what they did. They subtracted 12x from both sides. So if they subtracted 12x from both sides, that means that it's going to be the subtraction property of equality. Then, to get from step 4 to step 5, they actually added 14 to both sides. So the next step would be the addition property of equality. And last but not least, how did they get rid of that multiplied negative 15? Well, how do you reverse multiplication? You divide, right? So, in sum, in order to make a 2-column proof, you have your statements on the left and you have your reasons on the right. For the purposes of the Unit 3 test, you will be asked to create or to fill in an algebraic proof for a particular equation. That being said though, on the EOC, this is not going to be assessed algebraically. That was an Algebra 1 concept, right? On the EOC, you're going to have to do 2 columns with concepts like segments, angles, and quadrilaterals, among other things.